The night my family threw my things into the driveway, they didn't even wait for me to stop trembling from the fever. My mother pointed at the open door and said, "You're worth nothing here. Get out by tomorrow morning." My sister's scoffed arms crossed over her chest. "Yeah, and don't forget your pathetic little tote bag. That's all you own anyway." And my father, usually the quiet one, added the line that cut deepest. "If you can't help this family financially, you're just dead weight." They thought I was too sick to stand, too heartbroken to speak, too broke to fight back. They believed I'd disappear quietly like the burden they always insisted I was. But as I stared at the pile of my clothes lying in the cold dirt, something inside me hardened. I said nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply turned away, holding the last of my dignity like a thin thread between my fingers. And none of them knew that 3 days later, they would be the ones trembling. I remember that night, in fragments, shadows, sharp voices, the smell of damp carpet. Fever had been burning through my body since morning, leaving my vision blurry and my knees weak. I hadn't eaten. I could barely drink water. I had asked my mother earlier if she could bring me a cup of tea. She didn't even look up from her phone. "You're young, you'll survive." By evening, I knew something was terribly wrong inside me. My skin was cold and hot at the same time. When I tried calling my father for help, he sighed, like I was interrupting something far more important. "I'm dealing with real problems, Mia. Don't start with your complaints." I used to believe that families didn't abandon their own. I used to believe that blood meant compassion. That night I learned blood meant nothing without love. While I lay curled on the edge of my narrow bed, my sister Grace burst into my room, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Mom says, get up. We're having a family talk." Her voice always carried the same tone, like anything involving me was an inconvenience. I pushed myself up the room, spinning. "I'm sick," I whispered. "We know," she snapped. That's the problem. They had gathered in the living room as if preparing an intervention. My mother stood with her arms crossed, staring at me like I was some stain on the wall she'd discovered too late to scrub out. My father sat stiffly on the sofa, tapping his foot. Grace hovered behind them, smirking as if she were the star witness of some twisted trial. "We can't afford to keep supporting you," my father began. My mother nodded sharply. "You need to contribute, Mia. Or leave." "I'm trying," I whispered. "I've been working." Grace cut in with a mocking laugh. "Please. That part-time nonsense, you don't even make minimum wage half the time." She tossed her hair. "At least I help pay the car loan." My head felt like it was splitting in two, but I forced myself to remain steady. "I'm doing the best I can." "The best you can," my mother repeated, stepping closer. Her voice grew louder. "Your best doesn't pay bills. Your best doesn't keep the lights on. Your best doesn't help this family." I flinched at the volume. My fever made every sound echo inside my skull. My father added, "If you can't contribute financially, then you're just useless." That word stuck in the air like acid. Useless. I'd heard it before, whispered behind closed doors, said casually while they thought I wasn't listening. But hearing it directly spoken while I stood there burning with fever, fighting to stay upright, felt different. Final. Grace grabbed an old plastic storage bin and tossed it near my feet. "Here," she said, "pack your things." My chest tightened. "Right now, tonight," my mother ordered. "And be gone by sunrise." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how they could throw out their own daughter when she was shaking with illness. But none of them would have listened. None of them ever listened. So instead, I said nothing. Silence was the only shield I had left. I walked back to my room, slowly clutching the wall for balance. Every step felt like stepping through water. My breath rattled in my throat. Packing took what little strength I had, folding clothes with trembling fingers, placing my worn shoes in a corner of the bin, picking up my textbooks, and feeling stupid for believing my family cared about my future. Outside my window, the wind pushed against the house, making an eerie, hollow sound. I sat on the edge of my mattress, staring at the mess around me. My fever was worsening, my vision swam, my heart raced. Every instinct screamed at me to lie down, but I couldn't, not with their voices still echoing in my skull. Worth nothing. Dead weight. Useless. The bin was half full when my legs finally gave out. I sank to the floor, leaning against the bed frame. Cold sweat trickled down my neck. For a moment I thought I might faint, and then something snapped, not violently, quietly, like the soft click of a lock turning. My family didn't see value in me. They never had. And I realized with a strange, sharp clarity that I no longer owed them anything, not explanations, not loyalty, not love. My silence was no longer fear. It was strength. I stood up slowly, grabbing my coat off the chair. I didn't finish packing. I didn't take the bin. I didn't take anything but my phone and my wallet with $30 inside. I walked past the living room without saying goodbye. My family barely looked up, too convinced of their own righteousness, too certain they were clearing out a burden. Grace muttered under her breath, finally. My mother said good. Maybe now we'll have some peace. My father didn't speak at all. I stepped outside into the cold night air. The driveway lights buzzed faintly above me, illuminating the pile of clothes they had thrown onto the concrete, my life scattered like trash. I didn't pick them up. I didn't look back. I just walked. And even though I could barely breathe, even though my body was shaking uncontrollably, I kept going until the house disappeared behind me. My family believed they had won. They believed they had crushed me. But they didn't know the truth, not yet. They didn't know who I really was. They didn't know what I had built behind closed doors. They didn't know what power I held. And 3 days later, their world would fall apart with a single phone call. I barely remember how I made it to the end of the block that night. My fever blurred the streetlights into long streaks of gold, and the cold wind stabbed into my throat every time I breathed in. My legs were shaking so badly I had to stop near the corner mailbox just to keep from collapsing. Cars passed indifferent, and the neighborhood felt strangely unfamiliar, like I'd stepped out of my own life and into someone else's nightmare. But even through the pain, one thought repeated in my mind like a steady drumbeat: I can't go back. Not tonight. Not ever. I pulled my coat tighter, but it did almost nothing to stop the chill that had settled deep inside me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a low battery warning. I looked at the dim screen. 10% left, no messages, no missed calls, no one checking on me. It almost made me laugh. My entire life I had convinced myself that if I disappeared, my family would panic. I used to imagine my mother calling the hospitals, my father driving around looking for me, my sister feeling guilty for whatever cruel thing she'd said that day. But now that I was gone, really gone, no one cared. I walked toward the bus stop at the edge of town, clutching the metal pole, when my knees buckled again. I wasn't even sure if I could make it through the night. My head pounded. My fingers were numb. Every inhale burned like smoke. I checked the bus schedule. The next bus wouldn't arrive for 40 minutes. I couldn't stand that long. So I sank onto the cold bench and closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the dizziness. A woman's voice startled me. "Honey, are you all right?" I looked up. Mrs. Holton, our elderly neighbor, stood in front of me holding a grocery bag. Her eyes widened the moment she saw my face. "You look awful," she said, lowering herself onto the bench beside me. "Where's your family? Did they let you come out like this?" Something in my chest twisted. I looked down at my hands. They asked me to leave. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to process the words. Then she said quietly, "I heard shouting earlier, but I didn't think." Her voice trailed off. She leaned in, studying me as if seeing through my silence. "You're burning up, Mia. Let me drive you to urgent care." The idea of a warm car, a heated waiting room, a cup of water, it almost broke me. But I knew I couldn't go. I shook my head weakly. "I can't. I don't have insurance here anymore," and it was true. I had changed everything months ago. My life was rooted somewhere entirely different now, a place my family knew nothing about. Mrs. Holton frowned. "Where are you going then?" I swallowed. "To Asheville." She blinked. "At this hour? I need to get somewhere safe." She hesitated for a long time before nodding slowly. "Then wait here. I'll sit with you until the bus comes." Her presence was comforting, even though we barely spoke. Her breath fogged in the cold air, and she rubbed her gloved hands together as she glanced toward my house every few seconds. "You know," she murmured after a while, "a black medical SUV stopped by your place yesterday afternoon. I saw it from my window. They looked important." My heart jolted. "What kind of SUV?" "The kind they use for VIP medical transport," she said. "Not the usual ambulances. Quiet, discreet." She lowered her voice. It didn't stay long. No one answered the door. They left. I froze. My breath caught. That meant they had come for me earlier. Someone at the clinic must have noticed I hadn't checked in. Someone had sent help. Someone cared. Warmth surged through my chest, not from fever but from a flicker of connection. I wasn't alone after all. Before I could answer her, the bus rumbled into view. Mrs. Holton squeezed my hand. "Take care of yourself, dear. And if your family comes asking—" She paused, lowering her voice. "I'm not telling them where you went." I nodded gratefully and climbed onto the bus. The heat blasted from old vents overhead, and I sank into a seat near the back, shivering hard as my body fought the sudden temperature change. Closing my eyes, I leaned my forehead against the cool window and tried to steady my breathing. I knew where I needed to go. I had backup. I had a plan. And the people who actually valued me, who trusted me, respected me, were already waiting. By the time the bus reached Asheville, the streets were empty, and the sky carried that pale blue tint right before sunrise. My fever had worsened, making the lights blur like watercolors. I stumbled down the steps, gripping the railing tightly. The air was colder here, sharper. But the city felt familiar, alive. I could almost sense the pulse of the labs in the distance, the place where I had poured my heart and mind into something real, something powerful. I pulled out my phone again, hands shaking violently. 5% battery left. I tapped a number that wasn't saved under a name, just a single digit. It rang once, then a woman's voice answered immediately. Calm. Professional. Steady. "Mia," she said. "Where are you?" "Near the bus station," I whispered. "And your condition?" "Fever." "Bad." My voice cracked, and for the first time that night I let myself soften. "I need help." "You'll have it," she said without hesitation. "Stay where you are. I'll dispatch the team." "No sirens," I murmured. "No sirens," she confirmed. "Just hold on. We're coming." I hung up and slumped against the wall of the closed cafe next to the station. The weight of my body felt impossible to lift again. My breathing grew shallow, each breath trembling in my throat. The horizon brightened faintly. Birds began to stir in the trees overhead. Minutes blurred together. Then, a black SUV turned the corner, quiet, almost ghost-like, its headlights sweeping across the pavement. It stopped directly in front of me. 2 paramedics stepped out in dark uniforms, moving fast but gently. "Mia Lane," one of them asked. I nodded weakly. They exchanged a quick glance. "Let's get you inside." Their hands were warm on my arms as they helped me stand. My vision dimmed, but I forced myself to stay conscious until they settled me into the back of the vehicle, tucking heated blankets around my shoulders. As the SUV pulled away, I looked out the window at the quiet city waking up around me. My chest ached, not from the fever, but from something deeper: relief and resolve. Because the moment I left that house, everything changed. I was no longer the weak girl my family dismissed. I was no longer the worth-nothing burden they shoved aside. And whether they liked it or not, my silence was not submission, it was preparation. In 3 days they would learn exactly who I really was. And nothing would ever be the same. The ride to the clinic felt unreal, like drifting through a dream made of cold air and broken breath. I lay on the padded stretcher inside the black SUV, the hum of the engine vibrating faintly under me. One of the medical staff adjusted the IV line in my arm, his movements calm, practiced. Every now and then he checked my temperature and nodded to himself, quiet, confident, unshaken by how sick I was. "We're almost there," he said gently, as if he knew my mind was slipping in and out of coherence. The world outside the tinted windows blurred into smears of pale blue morning. And through the fog of fever, all I could think was how different this felt from the coldness of my own house. Strangers were treating me with more care and dignity than the people who raised me. When we reached the private entrance of the clinic, one I knew well, the team moved quickly. The glass doors slid open to reveal the polished floors, soft lighting, and quiet hallways reserved for VIP patients. Most people never saw this wing. I had helped design part of its medical protocol, but never imagined I'd be brought in as a patient myself. Director Monroe appeared at the foot of my stretcher, almost instantly dressed in a slate gray suit, her expression controlled but tight with worry. "Temperature?" she asked. 104.6, the medic replied. "Severe dehydration. High infection markers." Monroe nodded once sharply and moved beside me as they rolled me toward an isolation suite. "You did the right thing calling," she murmured. "You should have contacted us sooner." I tried to smile, but my lips barely moved. Didn't want to bother anyone. Her eyes flicked toward me, the faintest sign of frustration, but she said nothing. Monroe never wasted emotion, not unless it mattered. Inside, the sweet, warm air washed over me as the team helped me onto the bed. Machines beeped softly. IV fluids dripped. Oxygen hummed. I felt myself sink under the weight of exhaustion, sinking into the mattress like it was swallowing the last bit of strength I had left. At some point, someone lifted my head and helped me drink small sips of electrolyte water. Another medic took more blood. Fever jolted through my body like electrical sparks. I drifted in and out. Sometimes I caught fragments of conversation. "White blood cell count is elevated. Start broad-spectrum antibiotics. Contact the lab for immediate results." And then darkness again. When I woke fully, I didn't know how many hours had passed. The fever had softened into a dull, simmering ache behind my forehead. I blinked slowly, adjusting to the dim lights. I felt the IV in my arm, the oxygen tube near my nose, the crisp sheets tucked around me. Monroe sat in the corner of the room, tapping something on her tablet. She looked up immediately when she noticed I was awake. "You're stable," she said. "Better than earlier. Your fever is coming down." "You stayed," I whispered. "Of course." I glanced toward the window, realizing the sky outside had turned a brighter shade. Morning had fully arrived. How long was I unconscious? "A few hours," Monroe said. "We were monitoring you closely." My throat tightened. "Thank you." She set the tablet down and leaned forward slightly. "You don't thank people who are loyal to you, Mia. We're not here out of obligation. We're here because you matter." The words hit harder than I expected. Care like that felt foreign, almost jarring after the night I'd just endured. I swallowed. "Has the board been informed?" "Yes," Monroe replied. Quietly. "No public alerts, only need-to-know members." "Good," I murmured. "Keep everything silent." Monroe hesitated, studying me. "What happened at your family's house?" I stared at the blanket, tracing the folds with my fingers. "They told me I was worthless, that I should get out. My mother threw my things outside." Monroe's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "And you left quietly." I didn't have the strength to argue, I admitted. And even if I did, they wouldn't have listened. Monroe stood pacing once before returning to the bedside. "This changes things." I closed my eyes. "I know." Silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just heavy, like both of us understood that the ground beneath my life had shifted in a single night. When I opened my eyes again, Monroe had pulled up another file on her tablet. "There's something else you need to know. It's about the expansion proposal." Even through the fog of illness, I recognized the document. A major international partnership proposal, something we had been working toward for months, something our competitors assumed we weren't ready for yet. You're serious, I rasped. Monroe nodded. The valuation has increased again. Investors are circling. I let out a shaky breath. And they don't know I was lying on my bedroom floor last night, burning with fever. No, Monroe, said her voice steel-edged, and they will never know. What we build stands apart from what they did to you. Her certainty steadied me more than the IV fluids did. I pushed myself up a little, wincing as my muscles protested. Monroe adjusted the pillows behind me, then placed the tablet in my hands. What about the labs? I asked. Running smoothly, she said. Every division reported in tonight. They thought you were at a remote work site, which is why no one questioned the quiet hours. She paused. And your family? I exhaled slowly. They think I'm wandering somewhere with a half-empty bin of clothes. Monroe's eyes narrowed. They won't think that for long. I leaned back against the pillows, feeling the weight of exhaustion pull at me again. Let them have their 3 days. 3 days, Monroe repeated. It's what they gave me, I said softly. And it's exactly what I'll give them. Monroe didn't push for more explanation. She simply nodded. Then we'll prepare accordingly. The suite grew quiet again. The machines beeped rhythmically. Outside the building was waking, scientists arriving, security switching, shifts, the heartbeat of Emria Labs humming back to full strength. I watched the soft glow of the lights, the muted bustle of the hallway through the glass partition. This place, these people, this was the life I had built with my own hands. My own mind, my own determination. The world believed Emria Labs' innovations were the product of hundreds of brilliant minds, and they were but buried beneath all of it. At the core of every breakthrough was me. I had been the ghost in the machine, the silent force, the quiet architect. My family had no idea. As my fever continued to drop, I curled the blanket around my shoulders and let a slow breath fill my lungs. 3 days. 3 days before the world changed for them. 3 days before they learned the truth about the daughter they dismissed. 3 days before the roles reversed completely. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since leaving my family's house, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. The morning after I left my family's house looked calm from the outside, quiet, respectable, a picture-perfect suburban home. But inside tension hung so thick it stained the air. My father sat at the kitchen table staring at his laptop, his brows pulled together so tightly they nearly touched. My mother paced the room with her arms folded, and Grace slumped in a chair, scrolling through her phone like the world owed her an explanation. The calm didn't last long. A sharp ding echoed through the room. My father frowned and clicked on the new email that popped into his inbox. A bold subject line flashed across the screen. Urgent change in mortgage status. Action required. What on earth? He muttered. My mother rushed over. Mortgage. What about the mortgage? Father clicked the message, eyes scanning the contents. His voice tightened. It says the lender transferred our loan to a different portfolio. Something about a pending risk level evaluation. Grace snorted. Risk level? What's risky? We're fine. But even she sounded unsure. My father tried calling the bank immediately. He paced the kitchen phone pressed to his ear. The line rang, and rang, and rang. Then a robotic voice clicked in. All representatives are currently assisting other customers. Call volume is unusually high. He tried again. Same message. My mother bit her thumbnail nervously. Maybe it's a system glitch. Mortgage companies don't glitch, my father snapped. The silence that followed felt like the calm before a storm. Grace tried to break it by brushing her hair behind her ear. This has nothing to do with Mia, right? Her voice wavered just enough to betray her doubt. My mother scoffed. What could it possibly have to do with her? She's got nothing. She's always had nothing. But the way she said it, there was something hollow there. A knock sounded at the front door. Mother flinched. Who is that? Father opened it to find Mrs. Holton standing on the doorstep, grocery bag hanging from her arm. She glanced past him into the house before stepping closer. "Morning," she said. "I wanted to ask about Mia." Grace rolled her eyes. "What about her?" "She left, finally, Mrs. Holton didn't look amused. She shifted her grip on the bag. "Last night she was very sick at the bus stop, burning up with fever. She looked like she would collapse." My mother stiffened. "She left because she wanted to leave." "Did she?" Mrs. Holton asked sharply. "Or did she have no choice?" My father's jaw tightened. "We handled things as we saw fit." Mrs. Holton lowered her voice. "An SUV came by yesterday. A black one. Medical. The kind for high-profile transport." She paused. "That's not something poor girls get access to." Grace let out a forced laugh. "Mia high-profile, please. She probably begged for some charity ride." Mrs. Holton sighed like she pitied them. "Just thought you should know. That kind of transport doesn't show up unless someone very important requested it." She lifted her grocery bag and turned to leave. People underestimate quiet ones. Always have. The door shut behind her, leaving the family staring at each other. "What is she implying?" my father snapped. "That Mia's important," my mother whispered. Grace scoffed, but her eyes darted away. "She's not. She can't be." "What if we don't know everything?" Mother murmured. Grace went still. Father shook his head. "Ridiculous. She was a burden, a drain, that's all." But uncertainty had rooted itself inside each of them, creeping beneath their skin like cold water. My mother suddenly remembered something and rushed to the kitchen drawer. She pulled out a thick, unopened envelope, the one addressed to me that she'd accidentally intercepted the week before. Grace groaned. "Not that again. It's probably another bill or collection notice." But the envelope had a red stamp on the front, legal notice. "Open immediately." Father reached for the scissors, but Grace snatched the envelope before he could cut through the seal. "Just throw it away," she said. "It's Mia's mess. We don't need it." Father hesitated. Grace pushed harder. "Dad, she left us. Don't start worrying about her now." And because she was the daughter he always favored, the envelope disappeared back into the drawer unopened, ignored a warning left to rot. Upstairs, the tension simmered. Grace tried to distract herself by scrolling through social media. Suddenly, her shoulders tensed. "What is it?" Mother asked. Grace zoomed in on her phone. "There's a rumor going around about a young female biotech engineer from Asheville. Something about a hidden identity." She forced a laugh. "Probably nonsense." Her mother leaned closer. "Does it say a name?" "No. But some girl online says the CEO of Emria Labs is preparing a public announcement." Emria, father repeated. "The company that keeps popping up in the news, the one expanding like crazy." Grace shrugged. "Who cares?" But her voice cracked just slightly enough to expose a crack in her certainty. Across town, I was sitting upright in the clinic bed, much more awake, now, the fever-reducing medication helping me regain clarity. My assistant brought in the latest market report. "Your projected IPO valuation rose overnight," she said, placing the papers on the tray. I nodded, absorbing the numbers, feeling the strange contrast between the chaos at my old house and the power humming quietly around me. "They're unraveling," I murmured. She didn't ask who they were. She already knew. "You gave them 3 days?" she said softly. "Yes," I replied, my fingers tracing the soft silk of the scarf resting beside me, the very one Grace had tried to claim as hers. "And today is only the first crack." Back at the house, evening, shadows stretched long across the living room. My father's phone buzzed with another alert. He opened it with growing dread. "Mortgage evaluation. Scheduled. Preliminary review team arrival pending." Mother clapped a hand over her mouth. "They're coming here?" "Why? Maybe it's a mistake," Grace insisted. Father slumped into the chair. "Or maybe something is very, very wrong." Then, just as the last bit of daylight faded, headlights swept across the front yard. A dark sedan rolled quietly into the driveway. 2 men stepped out, dressed in tailored suits, clipboards in hand. Mother backed away from the window. "Who are they?" The men took photos of the house, made notes, and spoke into a small recorder. And then one of them looked directly at the security camera above the porch and said clearly, "Record completed. Repossession review continues tomorrow," Mother screamed. Grace finally lost her composure and grabbed her father's arm. "Dad, what does that mean?" Father could barely breathe. "It means someone owns this house now." And none of them knew that the someone was the daughter they had thrown out into the cold less than 24 hours earlier. By sunrise, the entire house felt different. Not physically, nothing had moved, but the air was heavy tight, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. My father sat at the kitchen table again, the same email open on his laptop. My mother hovered behind him, wringing her hands, and Grace kept pacing back and forth like a cornered cat. A faint thud sounded near the front door. My father froze. What was that? They rushed into the foyer. A thick envelope lay on the doormat, pushed through the mail slot. My mother bent down, lifted it with trembling fingers, and read the print across the front. "Final review notice. Property evaluation in process." Her breath left her in a sharp gasp. "Final review?" Grace snatched the envelope. "It's probably just another warning. They send these when they want extra fees." But her voice cracked, betraying her. My father ripped it open. Whatever he saw drained the color from his face. "This isn't a fee. This is serious." My mother pressed her fingers to her lips. "What do they want?" Before he could answer, Grace's phone buzzed with a rapid stream of notifications. She checked the screen and stiffened. "Is something wrong?" my mother asked. Grace swallowed. "People are talking. Online." About what? Grace hesitated, then muttered, "About Emria Labs, and some kind of big financial shift." My father barely looked up. "Not everything is about that company." Grace kept scrolling, fingers shaking slightly. "Someone said the CTO is a woman from Asheville, under 30, and that she's connected to a high-profile evaluation project." "Connected how?" Mother asked. Grace shrugged too quickly. "Who knows? It's all rumors." But the fear in her eyes said everything. Down the hall, my father finally found his voice. "I'm calling the bank again." He tapped the number with trembling hands. This time the call went through. "Good morning, sir," the representative said. "How can I help? I received a notice about our mortgage being reassigned. I need clarification." The rep typed something. "Yes, your mortgage was transferred under a portfolio managed by Emria Capital Division." Grace spun around. "Did she say Emria?" My father waved her silent. "Emria Capital." "Why? We've never missed a payment." "I'm not authorized to comment on portfolio decisions," the rep said. "But there will be an in-person assessment within the next 36 hours. My mother's voice trembled. "Assessment for what?" The line crackled. "Foreclosure evaluation, ma'am." The room tilted. My mother backed into the wall. My father grabbed the counter to steady himself. Grace shook her head violently. No, this can't be happening." But it was only the beginning. Upstairs, in the privacy of her room, Grace refreshed her social feed again. A friend had sent her a new link. Emria Labs CTO to reveal identity soon. Rumors point to North Carolina native. Grace stared at the headline, jaw tightening. Her phone buzzed again. "Vanessa, is it true? Is your sister involved with Emria?" Grace's pulse jumped. She typed fast. "No, she's broke. She has nothing." "Vanessa, then why did someone see her getting into a VIP medical vehicle last night?" Grace froze. She typed again, hands trembling. "She must have snuck into something. She's always been pathetic like that." But even as she hit send, her stomach twisted. Something wasn't adding up. Back at the clinic, I sat propped up against my pillows, clearer-headed now, though still weak. Monroe walked in with a folder tucked under her arm. "The media shift is accelerating," she said. "National outlets are beginning to pick up the rumors." I gave her a tired smile. "Let them. They'll know everything tomorrow." Monroe hesitated. "Your family hasn't reached out." "They won't," I murmured. "Not yet." She regarded me quietly. "You understand that once the reveal happens, there's no hiding anymore." I'm ready, I said. This time the silence ends on my terms. She nodded, then checked my IV line. Your fever's nearly gone. You'll recover fully by tonight. Good, I whispered. I wanted to be completely alert when the 3 days ended. At home, the tension finally exploded. My father slammed the laptop shut and stood abruptly. This is her fault. Mother blinked in confusion. Who, Mia? He snapped. Her leaving has brought nothing but bad luck. Grace folded her arms. It's exactly what I said. She cursed this house. Mother wrung her hands. But maybe we were too hard on her. Grace whipped around. You're taking her side now, Mother's lower lip trembled. I'm just saying, we don't know what she's been doing. Grace scoffed loudly. She's not doing anything. She's useless. But her voice wavered. She knew it wasn't true, not anymore. As if to challenge their denial, another message chimed on my father's phone. Your mortgage requires immediate documentation review. Team will arrive within 24 hours. Mother screamed. Why us? Why now? No one answered. In my room at the clinic, Monroe placed a new document in my lap. The foreclosure papers are drafted, she said. All you need to do is sign. One signature and everything is executed. I stared at the papers for a long moment. Then I gently pushed them back toward her. Not yet. Monroe tilted her head. You want to wait, I nodded. Let them enjoy their victory a little longer. They think they finally broke me. I exhaled slowly. Tomorrow begins their undoing. Monroe gave a single nod of understanding. Back at the house, dusk settled and the street lamps flickered on one by one. The doorbell rang. My mother nearly jumped out of her skin. My father forced himself to answer. On the porch stood the same 2 suited men from earlier. They were now joined by a third carrying a thick portfolio case. The first man spoke calmly. We're here to conduct the exterior evaluation. Tomorrow morning, we'll begin the interior. Grace staggered backward. Interior. You're coming inside our house per regulation, the man replied. The property is under risk reassessment. Whose regulation? My father demanded. Emria Capital Holdings, the man said, the current legal owner. The 3 of them walked the perimeter of the yard, taking more photos, while the family watched from behind the glass window, pale, shaking, helpless. Later that night, Mother sat on the edge of the couch, knees pulled to her chest. We're going to lose everything, she whispered. Grace bit back a sob. Call Mia. Call her mom. She'll pick up. She won't, Mother cried. Father paced the room like a man trapped in a burning building. Tomorrow we get answers. Whoever is behind this, we're going to find them. But the truth was already closer than they knew. As the first evaluation cars drove away, leaving the house under the glow of the porch light, my phone buzzed quietly on the nightstand in the clinic. A message from Monroe. They're panicking. Everything is unfolding exactly as planned. I looked toward the window where evening shadows stretched across the city. 3 days ago they threw me out like garbage. Tomorrow they would learn who I really was. And nothing, not their denial, not their cruelty, not their arrogance, would save them from what was coming next. By the time morning crept over the neighborhood, my family looked like they'd aged 10 years overnight. No one had slept, no one had eaten, and no one knew how to stop the slow-motion collapse forming around them. My father sat on the couch staring blankly at the TV, even though it wasn't on. My mother hovered near the window, peeking through the blinds every few minutes. Grace curled up at the dining table with her phone pressed against her chest, as if the world were trying to invade through the screen. Then the thing they feared most happened. My father walked to the kitchen to check his bank account again. He typed his password slowly, carefully, like he was defusing a bomb. When the page loaded, he froze. A red box flashed across the screen. Account temporarily restricted. Please contact your lender. He tried again. Same message. My mother rushed over. What does that mean? Did someone steal from us? My father swallowed hard. No, this is something else. Grace shot up from her chair. Dad, try the checking account. Try the savings. Try the other card. He tried all of them. Everyone showed the same red warning. That was when panic truly took hold. "This is wrong," my mother burst out. "We paid our bills, we did everything right. Why is this happening now?" My father grabbed his coat. "I'm going to the ATM." Grace and my mother practically ran after him. Outside, the cold wind whipped across their faces as they rushed toward the gas station down the block. My father pushed his card into the ATM slot and waited. The machine whirred. A message appeared. "Transaction declined. Contact your lender." He tried another card. Declined. Another. Declined. My mother pressed her hands to her face. This can't be happening. This can't be real. A man standing behind them in line muttered, "You too. My mortgage got transferred yesterday. They put my account under review. Something's going on with Emria Capital." Grace stiffened. "Emria?" The man shrugged. "Yeah, big corporation. They're buying everything these days." Grace swallowed, her pulse quickening, but she didn't say a word. When they returned home, something even worse was waiting. A black SUV was parked crookedly in front of their driveway. Two men in dark suits stood on the porch, placing a new envelope on the step. This one was thicker. Larger. My father rushed forward. "Hey, what's going on?" One of the men turned slowly, face calm and expressionless. "We're delivering an updated notice. Evaluation continues at 5 p.m. today." "What evaluation?" my mother shouted. "This is our house." The man didn't blink. "As of 3 days ago, your property was placed under a high-risk portfolio. Foreclosure review is standard procedure." Then the two men stepped into the SUV and drove off without another word. My father picked up the envelope with trembling hands. My mother hovered behind him, nearly hyperventilating. He opened it. Inside were 3 documents with heavy legal headers. My father scanned the first few lines before sinking onto the porch steps. Mother knelt beside him. "What does it say?" He looked at her helplessly. We might lose the house." Grace froze on the top step, color draining from her face. "No. No, Dad. Say something else. Say you read it wrong." But he didn't. He couldn't. And then Grace's phone buzzed again multiple times. She looked at the screen, her eyes widening. Online friends were messaging her nonstop. "Is your sister okay? People say the Emria Labs CTO is from your hometown. Grace, tell the truth. Was your sister involved?" Grace dropped her phone like it burned her. "What do they mean?" my mother demanded. "What are people saying about Mia now?" Grace's voice broke. "Rumors. Stupid rumors. Nothing real." But her mother reached down and grabbed the phone herself. Her face went pale as she read the headlines. "Emria Labs, CT, to reveal identity, tomorrow. Insider claims she has local roots." My father snatched the phone next, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "This isn't possible." "She's poor," Grace whispered, as if trying to convince herself. "She barely had money for lunch. How could she be part of Emria Labs?" My mother whispered, "Why didn't she tell us?" Grace snapped back instantly, "Because it's not real." But there was fear in her voice, deep, unmistakable fear. While they were falling apart, I was sitting in a quiet medical suite with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The fever had broken. My strength was returning. Monroe walked in with her usual purposeful stride. "The numbers look excellent. You'll be cleared for full work by tomorrow." I nodded. "Good." She hesitated before continuing. "One more update. The family reviewed the foreclosure notice." I stared ahead, calm. "And they're panicking. Let them," I murmured. Monroe studied me for a long moment. "You understand what happens tomorrow?" "Yes," I said softly. "Everything changes." She nodded once and left me to rest. Back at the house, the situation worsened. My father tried to calm himself. "We'll call the mortgage company again, ask for clarification." But even he couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. Grace sat in the living room staring at the blank TV screen. Suddenly she burst into tears. "She did this," she choked. "She's punishing us." My mother shook her head. "No, Mia would never." "She would," Grace screamed. "She hates us. My father slammed his hand on the table. Enough. We don't know anything yet. Silence settled like dust. And then, as if the universe wanted to make things brutally clear, the next blow hit. An email alert chimed on my father's phone. He opened it, his face drained. "It's from the lender," he whispered. Mother rushed over. "What does it say?" he read aloud, voice trembling. "Interior assessment scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Prepare all property documents. Failure to comply may expedite foreclosure." Mother's knees gave out. She sat on the floor and began to cry. Grace stared at the ceiling as if waiting for someone to save them. My father sank into the chair and buried his head in his hands. "This is all falling apart," he murmured. He wasn't wrong. That night, as darkness swept over the house, 2 cars parked outside again, without knocking, without speaking, without warning. They took pictures, scanned the property line with equipment, then drove away under a veil of silence. The family watched from behind the blinds like fugitives, and somewhere in the middle of her panic, Grace whispered the first honest thing she'd said in years. What if she wasn't worthless? No one answered. They all knew the truth, but they were too terrified to say it aloud. Meanwhile, in my quiet clinic, Suite Monroe connected my last IV line and checked the monitors. "Tomorrow is day 3. I nodded. "My family gave me 3 days to leave," I said softly. "So I gave them the same." She looked at me with respect and maybe a hint of pride. "You're ready then?" I smiled faintly. "Oh yes," I replied. "I'm very ready." Because in less than 24 hours the truth they had refused to see would rise in front of the entire country. And they would finally face the daughter they threw away. My father barely slept. By sunrise, he was already in the car, driving toward the nearest branch of his bank as if he could outrun the dread clawing at his insides. The sky was gray, low, and heavy, almost mocking him. My mother sat in the passenger seat, gripping her purse like a life raft. Grace was in the back seat, staring at her phone with hollow eyes. When they reached the bank, the parking lot was nearly empty. My father marched inside, bypassing the small line of customers and going straight to the counter. "I need to speak with a manager," he said sharply. The teller blinked. "Sir, if you can describe the issue, my accounts are locked," he barked. "All of them. I want answers." The teller swallowed, nodded, and disappeared into the back. Minutes later, a woman in a navy suit appeared, composed but wary. "Mr. Dawson, come with me." They followed her into a small office. She sat behind her desk and typed something into her computer. Her expression stiffened. "Yes," she said slowly. "Your accounts have been restricted." "We know that," my father snapped. "We want to know why." The manager folded her hands. "Sir, your mortgage was transferred into a high-risk portfolio managed by Emria Capital Division 3 days ago. They initiated a review that automatically freezes connected accounts until the evaluation is complete." Grace's head jerked up. "Emria," again my father leaned forward. "Explain what that means, in plain English." The manager inhaled. "It means the new loan holder, Emria Capital, has flagged your mortgage for potential foreclosure. During this process, they legally have authority to restrict movement of funds to prevent evasive asset transfers." My mother gasped. "Evasive? We're not criminals." "I'm not implying that," the manager said quickly. "But foreclosure reviews follow strict protocols." Grace pressed her palms to her temples. "So we're just broke. Just like that." The manager hesitated, temporarily. My father's cheeks flushed with anger. "We've paid every bill. We have never been late." "This is outrageous, sir," the manager said gently. "I understand. But this wasn't initiated by the bank." "Then by who?" he demanded. She looked at her screen again. "By the asset holder, which is Emria Capital," my father muttered. The manager nodded. Grace exhaled shakily. "This is because of Mia." My mother flinched. "Grace!" "It is," Grace cried. "Ever since she left. No, ever since we kicked her out, everything has gone wrong. She's doing this to us." My father clenched his jaw. "She doesn't have that kind of power." Grace let out an unsteady, humorless laugh. Are you sure? My father turned back to the manager, who authorized the freeze. She squinted at her screen. A corporate representative named Monroe Whitfield. My mother stiffened. That name. Grace looked stricken. Isn't she the CEO of Emria Labs? The manager blinked. Yes, she's listed here as the signing authority for this action. A long, horrifying silence followed. My father finally stood. I want to speak with someone at Emria. I can provide a contact number, the manager said. But I can't guarantee. He snatched the slip of paper before she finished. Back in the car, my father dialed the number with shaking hands. It rang, just once. A calm, polished voice answered. Emria Capital Holdings. How may I assist you? This is about my accounts, my father said, trying to sound authoritative. The foreclosure review is a mistake. I demand to speak with someone. One moment, please, the voice said pleasantly. Click. The call transferred. Another voice came through the tone, colder, older, in control. This is Executive Director Marina Caldwell. My father swallowed. Director. My name is Franklin Dawson. There's been an error with my accounts. No error, Director Caldwell said. Your mortgage was transferred. Your evaluation is active. But we never missed a payment. That is irrelevant, she replied. Your review is based on holistically assessed factors. My mother leaned over the seat. What factors? Director Caldwell did not hesitate. Behavioral and moral indicators. Grace's face twisted. What does that even mean? It means, Caldwell said, her voice level, that Emria Capital has credible evidence that your household engaged in conduct that compromises the integrity of your loan agreement. My father stared at the phone. Conduct. What conduct? Director Caldwell paused. The silence made all three of them shrink. Then she spoke. Your treatment of a dependent family member. My mother nearly choked. Dependent who? Director Caldwell answered calmly. Your daughter, Mia Dawson. The car went dead silent. My father looked sick. My mother covered her mouth. Grace's eyes filled with panic. My father managed a whisper. What does that have to do with anything? Director Caldwell's tone hardened. Borrowers flagged for abusive or negligent behavior toward dependent members of their household qualify for immediate reassessment under Emria's ethical portfolio guidelines. Abusive, my mother squeaked. We didn't. You brought harm to a family member who was seriously ill, Caldwell said, voice unmovable. We have documented evidence. Grace's breath shattered. Evidence? Yes. Grace closed her eyes, knowing exactly what she meant. My father stammered. We didn't mean intent is irrelevant, Caldwell replied. Impact is what matters. My mother finally broke. She reached forward, hands shaking. Please, please, Director Caldwell. We didn't know she was connected to your company. We didn't know. Caldwell's voice sharpened. Her connection is not the issue. Her treatment is. Father gripped the phone tighter. Then tell us how to fix this. You cannot fix it, Caldwell said. Your evaluation will proceed as scheduled. Prepare for the 10 a.m. interior assessment tomorrow. But good day, Mr. Dawson. The line went dead. Grace buried her face in her hands. She's ruining us, she whispered. She's really doing it. My mother whispered through trembling lips. We did this. We brought this on ourselves. But my father refused to accept blame. No. This is retaliation. I knew she'd do something like this. Even he didn't sound convinced. Back at Emria Labs, I stood on the balcony outside my recovery suite, breathing in the cool morning air. Monroe stepped out beside me. They called, she said simply. I know, I replied. They were expected to. She didn't ask if I wanted the evaluation paused. She didn't ask if I wanted to help them. She already knew the answer. We'll proceed, she said. I nodded. Tomorrow morning. And the reveal, Monroe asked. As planned. She gave a subtle smile. Then day 2 ends now. I closed my eyes for a moment. Somewhere across town, the family who had thrown me out of their home was falling apart piece by piece. Tomorrow the cracks would spread, and soon the entire structure of their carefully crafted world would collapse. The house was silent the night before the interior assessment, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind thick enough to choke on. Every breath seemed too loud. Every creak of the floor sounded like a warning. My father sat at the kitchen table staring at the foreclosure notice spread out in front of him. My mother hunched beside him, twisting the hem of her sweater. Grace hovered near the window, peeking out every few minutes, as if expecting another black SUV to appear. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Then, as the grandfather clock struck 9, the front door mail slot clattered. Grace jumped so hard her phone slipped from her hand. My father rose, walked stiffly to the door, and bent to pick up the envelope lying on the mat. He read the stamped header. Property ID. Verification required. Documents must be prepared for inspection. My mother whispered, "What if they don't approve? What if they take the house tomorrow?" Grace scoffed, but her voice wobbled. "They can't. They just can't." My father didn't say anything. His silence was louder than any answer. He opened the envelope and unfolded several sheets. His hands shook as he scanned the page. "They want the full mortgage file," he murmured. "Income proofs, ownership certificates, everything." My mother backed away. "We don't have half of that. You said you'd handle it years ago." "I did handle it," he snapped, then lowered his voice. "I thought I did." Grace folded her arms. "Just call the company, Dad. Tell them they made a mistake. Tell them Mia was the problem, not us." My mother flinched at that. My father rubbed his temples. "We're calling. All of us. Someone will explain this." But when he dialed the Emria Capital number, the automated system transferred him to a voicemail that repeated the same cold message. "Your review is currently in progress. A representative will contact you if additional information is needed." When the message repeated for the third time, my father slammed the phone down. Grace winced. "Dad, stop. We'll figure it out." But the panic was crawling up her throat, too. My mother's voice broke through the tension. "We need to talk about Mia." The room froze. Grace's face hardened. "Oh, not this again." But my mother shook her head. "No, we need to admit it. We don't know who she really was." My father scoffed. "We knew her. She was our daughter. Quiet, sickly, weak, and she had a second phone," my mother whispered. Grace stiffened. What my mother swallowed. "A few months ago I found it under her pillow when I did the laundry. It wasn't a cheap phone. It looked expensive." Grace narrowed her eyes. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because she asked me to put it back," my mother said softly. "And she asked me not to tell anyone." My father rubbed his forehead again. "You should have told us." My mother's voice trembled. "I thought it was harmless. But she was always receiving messages. They weren't social. They looked professional." Grace scoffed. "Professional, Mia, don't be ridiculous." But even as she said it, her hands trembled slightly. Then her phone buzzed again. Another notification. She looked at it and went pale. My father grabbed her wrist. "What is it?" Grace turned the screen toward them. "Breaking Emria Labs CTO to appear publicly tomorrow. Speculation says she may be from Asheville." My mother pressed a hand to her heart. "Asheville." Grace swallowed. "It's a coincidence. Tons of women live here." But fear flickered in her eyes. My father refused to accept it. "No, this isn't about her." My mother whispered. "How do you know he didn't answer?" Outside, tires rolled over gravel. A car approached slowly. All three of them rushed to the window. A dark sedan parked in front of their house again, this time with a different seal on the side. Emria Capital Verification Division. My mother gasped. "They're back." Two women stepped out of the car, one carrying a tablet, the other holding a clipboard and a badge clipped to her shirt. They walked around the house, scanning exterior walls with a device that beeped every few seconds. They took photos of windows, citing gutter lines, structural joints. Their calm professionalism made it feel even more terrifying. When they came to the front door, my father burst outside. Hey, stop! You can't just show up, unannounced. One of the women looked up. We notified you in advance, Mr. Dawson. You can't take our house. We have not taken it, she said calmly. We are evaluating it. The outcome depends on tomorrow's findings. My mother's voice cracked. Why are you doing this? Why us? The woman didn't blink. Your loan was reclassified under Emria's ethical portfolio division. Grace snapped, because of Mia, right? Because of her, the woman didn't answer. That silence was more damning than words. After their inspection ended, they left without a goodbye, leaving the family trembling on the porch. Inside, the house tension fractured into a full argument. You should have stopped her from leaving, Grace shouted at my father. You pushed her too, he fired back. My mother covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. Stop it, both of you. We all treated her badly. We all did this. Grace shook her head violently. No, I didn't do anything worse than you both. She was sick. Grace, my mother cried. She begged for help, and Grace shouted back, face red and twisted. She always wanted attention, always so dramatic. My mother flinched. But then she surprised everyone by slamming her palm on the table. No, not this time. She wasn't dramatic. She was dying. Grace froze. My father stared at his wife. What? My mother's voice dropped to a whisper. She had a fever. A terrible one. I could see it. When she touched my arm, her skin was burning. Grace swallowed. You never said anything. My mother covered her mouth. Because you both said she was faking it. Father's face cracked. Grace blinked rapidly, suddenly unsure of herself. The truth settled like dust, slow suffocating. My mother wiped her eyes. We threw her out. We left her alone. And now we're being punished for it. My father stiffened. We don't know she's behind this. No, my mother whispered. But deep down we know she's the reason it's happening. Grace's voice softened for the first time in years. Then we need to find her. My father exhaled shakily. We will. After tomorrow. Grace nodded. She'll talk to us. But my mother shook her head slowly. No, she won't. She looked at the window where the Emria car had disappeared down the road. Not after what we did. Back at the clinic, I sat on the edge of the bed as Monroe entered with a neatly pressed ensemble draped over her arm. Your outfit for tomorrow, she said. Public appearance at 10. Media conference at 11. I touched the fabric, soft, elegant, powerful. Monroe studied me a moment. You don't regret doing this? No, I whispered. Because regret was for those who had something to lose. My family had already taken everything from me. Tomorrow I took back the rest. Monroe nodded once. Then tomorrow, she said, your silence becomes your strength. I looked at the city lights through my window. Tomorrow they would learn who I had always been. They just never cared enough to see it. By the time the sun rose on the third day, the house was no longer a home. It was a tomb, quiet, cold, and waiting for the final blow. My father stared at the clock, as if time itself were an enemy. My mother sat rigid on the couch, with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, though the room wasn't cold. Grace paced the floor, chewing her lip raw. 10 a.m. approached like a storm cloud. At 9:57, tires rolled to a stop in their driveway. My mother gasped. They're here. My father stood smoothing his shirt, trying and failing to look in control. We stay calm. We cooperate. Grace hovered near him, arms wrapped tightly around herself.